Hello and welcome to ThePrint. Usually, I have traveled across a lot of places to interview people, and I've come to Kolkata to interview somebody that you guys probably fell in love with when he started out for a lot of rest of India, not so much Bengal, in Kahani. And I think so many people ended up having crushes on the character and the actor. And then most recently, you've seen him in Jahanabad. So actually, before I introduce him, let me ask him how to pronounce his name because I feel like that's something everybody should learn first.
Well, this is a tricky one, and I'll always go back and sort of look back with a little bit of anger at my late mother and father for giving me such a beautiful name. It's a beautiful name, but it's also not something that is not regular at all, and it becomes very tricky to pronounce it. I can jolly well imagine the plight of people from the rest of India, and also my plight because I just entire attempt of trying to explain to them. So in Bengali, it is pronounced as Parambrata.
Right.
So the thing is, if I want to literally transpose this to Devanagari pronunciation, then it would Param is Param in pronunciation of the rest of the country,
Right.
and Broto is Vrat basically. हम जो व्रत रखते हैं ना वो है. So it actually should be Param Vrat. But then whoever tries to pronounce my name, and if that person happens to be not from Bengal, then they usually pronounce my name as Parambrata. But it's actually wrong. It's Paramvrat. If you really have to sort of Hindify my name, then it's got to be Paramvrat. And if you want to give the Bengali pronunciation a good shot, then it's got to be Parambrata. Yeah.
Okay. So Parambrata, let's start with let's go back to JU. Because, when I took a trip down there and people did say, oh, yeah, he used to sit in this classroom, he used to be around us. So what was JU days like? Because I feel like JU has a strong connection with also the film industry.
Yeah, Jadavpur University has had a strong connection with the film and entertainment and sort of the cultural sector in Bengal, I think, because a lot of actors, filmmakers, writers, they've been to that university, including myself. But interestingly, my college days weren't very colorful because my first year was very colorful. My first year at Jadavpur University Department of English, Jude as we call it, was pretty colorful because it was first day in college and making new friends, and also Jude happens to be sort of a melting pot of people from different stratas and sections of society. So that was quite exciting. But middle of second year onwards, I already had started working. So then my visits to university would become a little less regular. And by the time I was in the third year, I already was working profusely. So it was sort of less frequent. Or even if I would go, I would really have to pick the classes that I would like to attend, and for the rest of the day, I would actually go to work. I had just started with television back then. So yeah, and I finished my graduation. Undergrads, and then I did think of sort of continuing with my masters, but then I quit, and I did my masters later on from Bristol University. That was in filmmaking. But yeah, so whatever little time I got to spend at JU was very, very exciting, but it wasn't as extensive as a lot of my other classmates have spent. Like they've spent more years, more number of days, done more things in the campus, which I never got the opportunity to.
Okay. So because we started with Kahani, and that's somewhere a lot of people, began recognizing that there's this actor, and probably the Googling really started. Like, who is this person who suddenly, came up? And then you did Aranyak, which again, it was very complicated. And then we've not had a lot of stories. Like there was a spate when Sherni came out and then Aranyak came out, which went into what happens in the forest and the myths in forests that we have. And you did Pari again, which again was a horror. So it's been quite like, no matter how, the list may not be extensive, like in the Hindi belt of it at least, but yeah, very, very, was it very, very conscious? Were there very conscious choices?
I would say till Bulbbul, the choices weren't very conscious.
Right.
The choices were more organic, and So after doing Kahani, a lot of people actually imagined me moving to Bombay, which I did not. I had no intention to. I was working here in Calcutta. I was directing here, and as well. And so yeah, I was very happy doing my kind of things here. Then in 2017, Pari happened, and it released in 2018. Again, it was a stroke of luck that it happened. I got a call from Clean Slate, and I thought that I was being called to audition. And then I landed up in their office and in Lokhandwala, and I traveled from Calcutta to, and I wasn't this regular in Bombay as I'm now, as I'm today. Back in 2017, I definitely was not this regular. And they said, okay, so we are starting from this and that. I said, hello, am I here to audition or am I here to? No, this is no audition. We actually want you only. I said, oh, wow, great. And then it was with somebody as big as Anushka Sharma. So it was, it just happened. Then I became, I still am, very, very friendly and very close and very, very pally with the entire Clean Slate team.
Right.
And they're absolutely lovely people. They're one of the best that I've ever worked with, actually. So it's all like, they all work like a family, and I sort of like to consider myself a part of that. And so they said that Anvita, who had written dialogues for Pari and was already an established and celebrated lyric writer, she said that I'm making my first film, would you like to be a part of it? And I really wanted to be a part of it. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. And that's how Bulbbul happened. It's only after, I would say, the pandemic. It was the pandemic times when my extensive work in Hindi started, I would say. So I have done twice the number of Hindi things in the last 2.5 years than what I have done in the 7 years prior to that.
Right.
Yeah, or 8 years prior to that, because Kahani released in 2012. So 12 to 19, whatever I have done in Hindi, is much less than what I have done between 2020 and 23.
Right.
So Aranyak happened, then Jugadistan happened, then Mithya happened, then I've just finished Mumbai Diaries season 2, and a host of other things, Jahanabad, of course, and I just did a film called Avasthi versus Avasthi, and then I did Kaun Praveen Tambe. So a lot of things kept happening. I'm also missing some, I think, I'm pretty sure, but yeah. And now that I kind of shuffle, I divide my time between Mumbai and Calcutta at the ratio of 40 there and 60 here. But it used to be like, 10 there and 90 here earlier. So it wasn't a conscious choice. In the last 2.5 years, I can say that, yeah, I have tried to keep it quite wide and varied, in the sense that I've tried to pick those things which, irrespective of their screen time, I felt that would leave an impact on the audience's minds once they finish watching it. Like, for instance, Kaun Praveen Tambe, the film was about Praveen Tambe. It wasn't about my character, but the way it was written, he was the narrator of the whole film, and also who also happened to be the person who was actually trying to bring Praveen Tambe down all his life. So and has a lovely turnaround by the end of the film. So you automatically, the take-home factor of that character is a lot more.
Do you feel that there's sometimes just pressure, because for so long, everybody, including me, who's not even a part of like the North Indian belt or Bombay, would consider Bollywood as Indian cinema, and that's about it. Everything else is regional cinema. And
sorry, yeah, please finish.
So I was just basically saying that because when you started, and then when people rest of India starts like, oh, this is this particular actor, and you already had a career. It's not like you started out with Kahani, right? But often it happens that just because people discover this particular actor later or as part of Hindi, they suddenly feel like, oh, this actor suddenly came up now. And it's not just with Bengali. Like, it has happened with actors from South as well, right?
Well, this is a situation, this is a sort of a, I don't know, a predicament which we have all learned to live with, I think.
Right.
Because I remember Prithviraj, the actor from Kerala, right. I remember, had done a film with Rani Mukherjee, and and I remember reading an interview way back in 2012, the same year Kahani had also come out, And he very sweetly put it out that, I've actually, when I'm doing this film with Rani Mukherjee, I'm a newcomer to the Bombay industry, Hindi industry.
Right.
But incidentally, I have done, in terms of number of films, I have done more films than her, because, Prithviraj has been doing films since mid-90s or late 90s in Malayalam cinema. So, same for me. I mean, when I did Kahani in Bengal, I had already done a good 10 films or so. But when I was doing Kahani, at least 10. I'm pretty sure. And I'm just let alone the television stint. That's extensive. But then in 2007, I quit television, and I had done a few films before that as well. But between 2006 and 7 and 2010-11, when we shot for Kahani, I had already done a good number of 5-6 films. But then this is how things are. I mean, because India is a country where almost every corner has its own film industry. And it's a multilingual, multicultural country, right? So it is not possible for every film lover in every corner of the country to watch films from every language. And Hindi being the largest spoken language, it has taken up the fore. It has become the de facto the national film industry, let's say, Hindi film industry. So, which is loosely called Bollywood. So, people abroad, people outside the country, as well as inside, I think they find it easier to sort of term Indian cinema industry as Bollywood. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. I like to call it the Hindi film industry, which is, I think, and it is undoubtedly the biggest, I think, in terms of its reach. And I think in terms of money, I think down south they are richer.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
But in terms of its reach, I think the Hindi film industry is still the biggest, and there's no harm in accepting it. It's just that trying to look at Indian cinema with a homogenized lens will be a wrong thing to do. That's what I try to explain to people from outside of India who try to understand Indian cinema, and often make the mistake of painting it in one single hue called Bollywood. I said, no, it's not. Everything is not the same.
Right.
And also some Indians living abroad who would like to think that, or even in the country, who would like to think that cinema from all corners of the country should be of the same kind. And that is when I think we need to kind of softly raise our hand. I said, that way I think the beauty of our lovely country will be lost, because Assamese cinema will be different by virtue of its cultural nuances, and linguistic nuances will be different from Odia cinema. Odia will be different from Gujarati. Gujarati will be different from Bengali, and Bengali will be different from Tamil. So I think so it cannot be sort of homogeneously called Bollywood. It should not be. But there's no harm in accepting that Hindi film industry is the leading film industry.
Okay. So because you're talking about you have a body of work which is independent of what you're doing in Bombay. So if you had to pick 3 top films of yours that everybody should watch, and they're in Bengali, what are the 3 ones?
I'm just saying randomly. I might change my mind when I sit down with the whole list. But just randomly, I think if I have to name 3 films, I think I would name Hemlock Society, Chotushkon, and Upur Panchali.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll actually come back to 2 very cult favorites in Bengal, Baishe Shravan, and then the spin-off that came out, Ditiya Purush. Yeah. So let's talk about that, because it's been commercially successful, yes, but it's also I watched it very recently actually, and I didn't know what to expect, because this was recommended by somebody and said that, you have to watch it. It's very unexpected. It also has an element of detection. It also has all of it. So tell us about these films, because the latest one came out 2020, right? Yeah. And people have when I say cult following, they really have cult following.
Yeah.
So the experience of being part of these 2 films.
I didn't even know that this film is going to become this big. Srijit was just fresh out of Autograph success, and he was about to make his next film. And one day he called me and told me that, I'm making that. I'm thinking of turning that script into my next film, which I had narrated to you 2.5 years ago, before you left for England. I said, oh my God, that one. Okay. I said, yeah. Okay, so who's playing what? I said, okay, this is Pumada is playing this and you're playing that. Okay, lovely, great, let's just do it. And that's how it happened, because I was also quite young back then. I had just come back from England and I had just finished shooting for Kahani. In fact, Baishu Sabun was, so I shot for Kahani and this other quite popular film of mine called Bhutar Bhavishyat, like back to back. And then I didn't shoot for anything for a good 3-4 months. And then I think 2011 April we started shooting for Baishu Sabun. So I said, okay, yeah, let's just shoot it. It would be my first film with Parambrata Chatterjee as well, Bulbbul as well, and I'm a young actor, also wanting to be a filmmaker, and getting to work with Bulbbul is always something for a young actor. It's quite something that one looks forward to. So yeah, and then he had Sujit got together a very eclectic cast. Gautam Ghosh was part of it as an actor, and Raima I was working with after Bong Connection. In fact, that started, Baishu Sabun started sort of Raima and my sort of partnership or on-screen partnership, which we have repeated in several films later on. And we also got to know each other a lot better through this film. So yeah, it was, so we didn't know, I mean, I knew that we were making something quite up there. I mean, quite exciting. But I didn't really know it's going to become this thing. Yeah, right. Very honestly. Yeah.
And what about when the spin-off happened? What about that? Like, because it came like pretty 8 years at least down the line, right?
Yeah, so, 9.
Yeah.
So the spin-off, I think I personally feel the way Srijit sort of, in fact, the spin-off happened based on an idea that I had narrated to Srijit. That is the reason the film also has story credits, my name in story credits, because I had heard it from a friend of mine, whose name is also there, by the way. Right. And I had told him that, dude, what a story this is. I want to make a film out of this. And I had made something in my head on it and had narrated to Srijit that, you know, there's a film that I'm thinking of, it's in these lines, which never got made. And much later in 2019, Srijit came to me and told me that, see, I want to make the spin-off from Baishu Sabun. I'm calling it Ditiyo Purush. And I want to base it on that story you told me. I said, okay, yeah, I'm not going to make that film ever again. So yeah, why not? And I think it turned out rather well. I quite like Ditiyo Purush myself. And in fact, I think he's making a third spin-off this year. Yeah. Which I'm sadly I'm not a part of, but yeah.
Okay, so because you've worked with OTT, when this boom happened, very obviously it happened the most during COVID, right? Of course, we had like this inroads already. I mean, Hoicho is one of the first regional platforms that came out, and it's pretty massive at this point.
Yeah.
And of course, we had our old Netflix to Sony Live and all of it. So, do you think that then suddenly, like, all of India as an audience, not so much as just making a film or a series, suddenly became very open to accepting and actually getting excited by the prospect of new kind of stories, which earlier wasn't happening as much?
Yeah, I think just the bar has been raised quite a bit.
Right.
Also, I think that goes to explain, for a large chunk of the fact that why a lot of films on the big screen are not working these days. Because I think the 2 years of the pandemic has, those 2 years have just raised the bar for the audience. They have gotten exposed to so much of things from all over the world. I think it's very difficult to sort of get away with doing the same things or repeating the same production values, repeating the same stunts, repeating the same stories, and repeating the same kind of writing any longer. I mean, you can't really think that, okay, जो हम 2017 में कर रहे थे वही करेंगे और इस बार भी वही चलेगी. It's not. The last 2 years, 2020, 21, these 2 years have really changed the way people look at content, I think. Yes, OTT was there before. In fact, interesting that you mentioned this. In fact, from Bengal, I and my company, Roadshow Films, happened to be one of the very first people to dabble with OTT from this part of the country. The Feluda that we were talking about,
right.
We made the Feluda for the first time at absolutely shoestring budget. It was a no-budget production for a just sprouted OTT platform in 2017. And also Z5's first Bangla projects, Z5 Bengali first 2 Bangla projects were done by us, actually, produced by us. In fact, 2 films and two series and 1 film were all done by us. So ever since, I think I became interested and excited about the whole idea of OTT, because I just thought that this there's a lot more scope to explore a story. There's more scope for characters to get explored. You can actually make something slow burn. You can actually elaborate. Rather, let me put it this way: you can actually elaborately talk about a character. You can show the growth of a character in a more elaborate manner, which in films you have to kind of keep it a little half-baked at times, because you cannot address every single character, because you just have to finish a film in 2 hours. But whereas here you have the opportunity to clearly reveal the arc of every character. So yeah, it's ever since 2018 when we first produced for Z5, I think I have been excited about OTT, not only as an actor but also as a producer and director. And it's nice that today in the Hindi space especially, I have been known more for my work in OTT in recent years. Yes.
Okay. So I want to use a phrase that suddenly has cropped up a lot in social media. Actually, a lot more because of what happened, like the crisis moment, like you said, that films weren't selling a lot and people were going back to OTT. It was also a money thing, like, okay, I could pay a specific amount and everybody can go and watch it. So this term called men written by women, right? Like this is a term now suddenly that have come up, which basically means that the male characters that we now see on screen are probably not the kind of slightly toxic characters we would see, are more supportive characters.
Okay.
So I feel like, Satyaki's character was one of those first men written by women characters, because why it stands out as a character for a lot of people is that kind of support that this person gets, right? And I know that there have been articles written about, this person did this character. And so, do you have anything to say about that? Do you think that there are better men coming out in terms of characters, actually?
Actually, I do think that there are better men coming out, because unfortunately, I think in the subcontinent, we have had a very long history of celebrating toxic masculinity, especially in cinema.
Right.
For me, I have grown up a bit of a softie, in the sense that, the way I was brought up by my parents, I was never taught to champion or taught to celebrate the typical ideas of masculinity, or the typical definition of masculinity, or other definitions, or those traits or attributes which would often be used to define masculinity. I was never really taught to celebrate them. So for me, men written by women would be the men, actually.
Right.
But as I grew up, and especially once I started working in films, I had to sort of really come to terms with the fact that this amount of, the male characters get away with saying and doing so much shit. And it is, instead of being opposed or challenged, they are celebrated. And I mean, unless you do such kind of things, you are not touted as a commercial hero. Sad but true. So just about when I had sort of, come to terms with that, and I think the OTT revolution happened, and these more nuanced, mellower, milder, and much more sensitive male characters, I think, have come to the fore, which I think, I really hope that at least for a certain section of people will help change the idea of being a man. Yeah.
Like, because even in Bulbbul, I remembered suddenly, because
totally.
you have so many toxic...
I think I've consciously, unconsciously, I think all my life I've been playing such characters. Like from Kahani, especially in Hindi, to full on. I think the first sort of character which I've played with a bit of sort of so-called toxic machismo, I would say, is in Jahanabad, I think, a little bit. But before that, be it Kahani, Pari, Bulbbul, Aranyak, everywhere I am this really, this person who is, has a tremendous softer side to him. Yeah.
Like very dependable. Like you
very
know
dependable
you could,
and always like trying to sort of playing a support system to a very strong woman. Yeah.
I think it's actually good to be able to see that kind of men, because that's how we, as women, also we grow up, right? Like we also get like a Pride and Prejudice. Everybody falls for a Mr. Darcy the first time you read it.
Yeah.
And it takes years later, you suddenly realize, okay, what was he doing? What was he saying?
Yeah.
So I think it's actually, I feel like it's good. Like if you have more characters like this, even women would be like, this is acceptable, not this behavior.
Yeah,
I think it also plays out like that. Actually, coming back to, because you mentioned family, I mean, we know that there's an illustrious line there with Ritu Ghatak and Mahashweta Devi. I just wanted to, like, for more of the audience than me probably, I'd want to know, what was it influence or like? Or was it at some point, was there certain expectations already set when you decided that, okay, I want to start acting? Like, does it happen that, oh, you know, look at the family name, this guy must have something already?
See, for one thing, maybe because I think that's one faculty which inside me which never really worked. I don't know why, but I've never ever been aware of any expectations on me.
Right.
Not from the family, not from anybody actually. I was only operating by an expectation that I had from myself and nothing else. I think it's much later that I came to understand that yes, actually, when I entered the world of films, probably there were certain members of my family, my extended family, who were not even living in India, living in the US or the UK or Dhaka, who were probably in their heads thinking that, now that you've entered films, you need to carry forward the legacy. The Ghatak legacy. And Ritu Ghatak in his lifetime wasn't a particularly successful man. I mean, his fame or his, he was rediscovered after his death. So, but you, now that you are, you come from the same family and now you are into the world of films, not only do you have to live up to the creative expectations, the creative legacy, you should also ensure that you in your lifetime become successful enough to kind of break that or bust that myth that the Ghataks are incredibly creative people but who never managed to become successful in their lifetime. So it was much later that I have come to realize that my Mashis and all, they actually thought in this way. But when I started out, for the major part of my career so far, I never even knew that such things have existed. It's only when my mother passed away in 2014 and in the last 8-9 years, I have become a lot closer to my Mashis for obvious reasons, because they now feel the tremendous responsibility of looking after me. Because I've lost both my parents fairly young. It's quite sweet. Sometimes tad annoying, but yeah, it's quite sweet too. So now in the last 7 or 8 years, I've realized that अच्छा ये भी मामला है actually. मुझे पता है, बिल्कुल नहीं पता था मुझे actually. Yeah.
Actually, I'll come back to Hindi, because considering I am from the East and I've spent like 13 years later, if somebody has this longish conversation, I think they figure out.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
We do have our own intonation issues. So what was that like? Like, because I believe, at least I don't see, and a lot of people, like, if I don't know what your name is at the screen at that point, I don't think I'll take a wild guess and say, it's an actor's thing.
I don't think it's an actor's thing. I think some people have a tendency to pick up languages. I think I'm one of them. I'm also someone who is incredibly particular and careful about language. I got this from my father mainly, I think. My father once told me that a very famous Bengali poet, Bulbbul, who had once said that if you do not know your native tongue well, you will never be able to learn any other language. So I'm very careful about the Bangla that I speak, and I often end up having very bitter tiffs with my assistant directors, with my, all these, what do you call them on Instagram? Gen Z, Niba Nibi, whatever they call them. Yeah, them. Because they use just anything in the name of Bengali. Also, they use just about anything in the name of English.
Right.
So I'm and in the process, it's all. It's all cool and all, I believe, I guess. But then in the process, the beauty of language and the beauty of speaking a language correctly goes for a toss. So I'm very particular about speaking and writing good language. I'm very fond of languages because languages actually represent long histories and long histories and cultures and legacies. They're not just languages. So that is also the reason why when I started working in Hindi a little more frequently, I told myself that since I'm working in Hindi a little more, I better pick it up well. And I need to learn, if I'm using a Urdu word, let's try and get the nukta right. And I have sort of managed to get 70% of the gender right, which is a common problem for Bengalis, because Bengali being a gender fluid language. I think I've managed about 70-75% of it. So I can proudly say that I'm very fond of languages, and I can also I take a bit of pride in saying that I think I have mastered Hindi and Urdu better than a lot of my Bengali compatriots who are also simultaneously working in Hindi.
For sure, which is why I said, like,
Thank you.
From the screen, I would never guess if I did not know. Actually, come down, and I want to end with something fun, because every time somebody wants to come down to Kolkata, the first recommendation is food, right? Like, you have to try 20. In fact, the list is so long, you feel like, oh, and how do I finish this? Do you have favorites that you always go back to? Because I know that as an actor, there's an expected physicality and physique and everything else that you have to maintain. So if you have to give recommendations.
Right, exactly. So what I do is, it's been quite long that I've absolutely stopped having junk food from outside. Okay. Because I love eating and because I love Bengali food, what I do is, instead of eating junk food, I eat a lot, and I eat everything, but everything homemade. Like a proper Bengali meal with rice and fish curry and meat curry and veggies and dal and nice sweet chutney and all of that. But everything made at home with bare minimum oil and just a healthy way of eating all the things that you like. So recommendation for you coming to Calcutta, come home, I'll treat you to one lovely dinner.
Great. So I will tell you if that happened. But thank you so much. This is wonderful to finally get to talk.
Pleasure.
And keep watching probably more videos and give us recommendations who else we should talk to. And I hope you enjoyed this interview, because honestly, I had the best time. Thank you.